I stared at the clock, willing the hands to move faster. Another dinner with Tom's mother loomed, and my stomach churned at the thought. The office bustled around me, a welcome distraction from the evening ahead. "Nancy, you've got that look again," Jen said, peering over her computer screen. "Dinner with the mother-in-law?" I nodded, forcing a smile. "How'd you guess?" "You always get that deer-in-headlights expression on Barbara days." Jen's sympathy was palpable. "Want to grab a quick drink before you head home? Might take the edge off." The temptation was strong, but I shook my head. "Thanks, but I better not. Tom would notice, and then I'd never hear the end of it." As if on cue, my phone buzzed. Tom's face flashed on the screen, and I answered with a sigh. "Hey, honey, you're on your way home, right? Mom's expecting us at 7 sharp. I glanced at the clock again. 5:45. "I'm leaving now, Tom. I'll be there in plenty of time." "Great. Oh, and Nancy? Mom mentioned she's got some big news. Try to act excited, okay?" The line went dead before I could respond. I gathered my things, said goodbye to Jen, and headed for the elevator. As the doors closed, I caught a glimpse of my reflection. At 40, I looked good, better than I had in my 20s, if I'm honest. But there was a tightness around my eyes, a weariness that no amount of concealer could hide. The drive home was a blur of traffic and anxiety. I pulled into our driveway at 6:30, giving myself just enough time to change and touch up my makeup. Tom was waiting in the living room, keys in hand. "There you are," he said, giving me a perfunctory kiss. "Ready to go?" I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. We drove to Barbara's in silence, the tension thick between us. As we pulled up to her immaculate colonial, I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what lay ahead. Barbara answered the door with her usual false warmth. "There's my boy," she cooed, embracing Tom. She turned to me, her smile never reaching her eyes. "Nancy, dear, so glad you could make it." We followed her into the dining room, where the table was set with her best china. Tom's brother George and his wife Sarah were already seated, looking as uncomfortable as I felt. "Well," Barbara said, clapping her hands together, "shall we eat? I'm just dying to share my news." Throughout the meal, Barbara dominated the conversation, peppering us with not-so-subtle digs about our childless state and my career. I caught Sarah's eye across the table, recognizing the same trapped expression I wore. Finally, as Barbara cleared the dessert plates, she paused dramatically. "Now for my announcement. I've been thinking long and hard about this, and I've decided it's time for a change." We all leaned in, curiosity momentarily overriding our discomfort. "I'm selling this big old house," Barbara continued. "It's just too much for me to manage on my own, and I've found the perfect solution." My heart sank. I knew what was coming before she said it. "I'm going to move in with one of you. We'll be one big happy family again. Isn't that wonderful?" The silence that followed was deafening. I looked at Tom, praying he wouldn't volunteer us, but the eager expression on his face told me everything I needed to know. "Mom, that's a great idea," he said, beaming. "Nancy and I would love to have you stay with us, wouldn't we, honey?" All eyes turned to me. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. The room started to spin, and I realized with horror that I was about to faint. As darkness crept in at the edges of my vision, one thought echoed in my mind. This can't be happening. This can't be my life. I woke with a start, my heart racing. The events of last night's dinner flooded back, and I groaned. Fainting at Barbara's announcement wasn't exactly my finest moment. Tom stirred beside me. "You okay, honey? You gave us quite a scare last night." I sat up, rubbing my temples. "I'm fine, just overwhelmed, I guess." He patted my hand. "I know it's a big change, but having Mom here will be great. You'll see." I bit back a retort. How could he be so blind to his mother's true nature? "I need to get ready for work," I said, slipping out of bed. At the office, I couldn't focus. Barbara's words echoed in my head. "We'll be one big happy family again." The thought made me shudder. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. "Can we talk? Lunch today?" I replied immediately. "Absolutely. 12:30 at Café Margot?" Sarah was already there when I arrived, looking as frazzled as I felt. We ordered quickly, then leaned in close. "Nancy, I can't believe this is happening," Sarah whispered. "George is thrilled about Barbara moving in with one of us. He keeps saying how helpful she'll be." I snorted. "Helpful? More like suffocating. Tom's the same way. It's like they're both under some sort of spell." Sarah nodded vigorously. "Exactly. And Barbara, did you see how she looked at us when she made her announcement? Like a cat that caught the canary." "I noticed," I said grimly. "Sarah, we need to do something. We can't let her take over our lives like this." "But what can we do? The boys won't listen to reason where their mother's concerned." I sighed, pushing my salad around. I don't know, but there has to be a way to make them see her for who she really is. Just then, my phone buzzed again. It was Tom. Mom's coming over for dinner tonight. Says she wants to discuss living arrangements. Be home by 6, okay? I showed Sarah the message. Her face fell. Oh, Nancy, I'm so sorry. Good luck tonight. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I left work early, determined to have a moment alone with Tom before Barbara arrived. But when I got home, I found them already in the living room, heads bent over floor plans. Nancy, Barbara trilled. So glad you're here. We're just discussing where to put my things. I froze in the doorway. Your things? Tom beamed. Mom's decided to move in with us? Isn't it great? The room started to spin again. I gripped the doorframe, willing myself not to faint. When did this happen? Barbara waved a dismissive hand. Oh, Tom and I have been discussing it all day. We didn't want to bother you at work, dear. I looked at Tom, betrayal burning in my chest. He had the grace to look sheepish. I was going to tell you tonight, honey. I just got excited. I see, I said, my voice sounding strange even to my own ears. And when is this move supposed to happen? Barbara clapped her hands. This weekend. No time like the present, I always say. I nodded woodenly, then turned on my heel. Excuse me, I muttered. I need some air. I stumbled out to the backyard, gulping in deep breaths. This couldn't be happening. It had to be a nightmare. But as I stood there, staring blindly at our neatly trimmed lawn, a memory surfaced. Something Sarah had said once about Barbara's past, a rumor she'd heard from an old family friend. Something about cruelty, about secrets buried deep. In that moment, a seed of an idea took root. If Barbara was going to invade my home, my life, then I was going to find out exactly who she really was. And if there were skeletons in her closet, I was going to drag them into the light. I straightened my shoulders and headed back inside. Let Barbara think she'd won. I had work to do. The next morning, I woke early, my mind racing with plans. I needed to talk to Sarah, to compare notes and strategize. As I sipped my coffee, my phone buzzed with a text from her. Can you meet? It's urgent. We agreed to meet at a small park near my office during lunch. When I arrived, Sarah was already there, pacing nervously. Nancy, thank God you're here, she said, her voice trembling. I don't know how much more I can take. I guided her to a bench. What happened? Sarah's eyes welled with tears. It's Barbara. She's been relentless. Ever since the dinner, she's been calling nonstop, showing up unannounced, and George just lets her in like it's normal. I felt a surge of anger. What's she doing when she comes over? Criticizing everything. My cooking, my cleaning, even the way I dress. Yesterday, she brought over a bunch of her old clothes and told me I should dress more appropriately for my age. I'm only 38. I squeezed her hand. That's awful, Sarah. I'm so sorry. She wiped her eyes. That's not even the worst part. Last night, I overheard her talking to George. She was saying how disappointed she was that we haven't given her grandchildren yet, as if it's any of her business. My blood ran cold. I knew all too well the pain of that particular criticism. What did George say? Sarah's face crumpled. He agreed with her. Said maybe we should try harder. Nancy, I can't have children. We've known this for years. George knows this, but suddenly it's like he's forgotten everything we've been through. I pulled her into a hug, my mind whirling. This was worse than I'd imagined. Barbara wasn't just meddling. She was actively trying to drive a wedge between us and our husbands. Sarah, I said slowly, remember that rumor you mentioned once about Barbara's past? She nodded, sniffling. Something about her being cruel Tom and George's father, right? But it was just gossip. Maybe, I said. But what if it wasn't? What if there's more to Barbara's story than we know? Sarah's eyes widened. You think we should look into it? I think we need to, for our own sanity if nothing else. Do you remember who told you about it? She thought for a moment. It was Mrs. Jennings, I think, Tom and George's old neighbor. She moved to Florida a few years ago. I nodded, a plan forming. Can you get her contact information? I think it's time we had a chat with Mrs. Jennings. As we parted ways, I felt a glimmer of hope. We had a lead, a potential chink in Barbara's armor. But when I got home that evening, my newfound optimism evaporated. Barbara was there, presiding over my kitchen like she already owned it. Nancy, dear, she called. I hope you don't mind, but I've taken the liberty of rearranging your cabinets. Much more efficient this way. I stood frozen in the doorway, taking in the chaos. My carefully organized kitchen was unrecognizable. Tom appeared behind Barbara, beaming. Isn't Mom great? He said. She's been here all day, helping out. I forced a smile. How thoughtful. Barbara bustled over, patting my cheek condescendingly. Now don't you worry about dinner. I've prepared a lovely pot roast. Tom tells me you're not much of a cook, but I'll be happy to teach you. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. Tom, oblivious to my distress, was already setting the table. As we sat down to eat, Barbara dominated the conversation, peppering her monologue with backhanded compliments and not-so-subtle digs. I pushed my food around, barely tasting it. Then Barbara dropped her bombshell. Oh, I almost forgot to mention, I've invited a lovely young woman from my church to dinner tomorrow night. She's new in town and looking for work. I thought you might be able to help her out, Nancy. After all, you must have some pull at that little publishing house of yours. I froze, fork halfway to my mouth. Excuse me. Barbara smiled innocently. Well, dear, I just thought it might be nice for you to mentor someone. Give you a taste of what it's like to nurture a young person, since you and Tom haven't been blessed with children of your own. The room fell silent. I looked at Tom, waiting for him to defend me, but he just smiled weakly and changed the subject. In that moment, I knew. This wasn't just about Barbara moving in. This was war. The next morning, I woke with a sense of dread. Barbara's dinner invitation to the young woman from her church loomed over me like a dark cloud. I knew it was just another of her manipulations, but I couldn't see a way out of it. As I got ready for work, Tom hovered nearby, his face etched with concern. Nancy, are you okay? You've been so quiet since last night. I turned to face him, struggling to keep my voice steady. Tom, don't you see what your mother's doing? She's taking over our lives, criticizing everything about me, and now this dinner. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. She's just trying to help, honey. Maybe if you gave her a chance. A chance? I cut him off, my voice rising. Tom, she rearranged our entire kitchen without asking. She's constantly putting me down, and now she's trying to push some random girl into my workplace. How is any of that helping? Tom's face hardened. Mom's going through a tough time, Nancy. She needs us. I thought you'd be more understanding. I felt like I'd been slapped. Understanding? What about understanding me, Tom? Your wife? He shook his head, grabbing his keys. I can't deal with this right now. I'll see you tonight. The door slammed behind him, leaving me alone with my anger and frustration. At work, I couldn't focus. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Any luck with Mrs. Jennings? I'd completely forgotten. Working on it, I replied. How are you holding up? Her response was immediate. Barely. Barbara's here again, says she's tidying up while I'm at work. Help. My heart sank. I needed to act fast. During my lunch break, I finally tracked down Mrs. Jennings' number and made the call. Hello? A wavering voice answered. Mrs. Jennings, this is Nancy, Tom's wife. I hope you remember me. There was a pause. Oh, yes, dear. How are you? How's Barbara? I took a deep breath. Actually, Mrs. Jennings, that's why I'm calling. I was hoping you could tell me more about Barbara's past, specifically about her relationship with Tom and George's father. The silence on the other end was deafening. Finally, Mrs. Jennings spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Oh my, I never thought... Well, I suppose it's time someone knew the truth. For the next 20 minutes, Mrs. Jennings painted a picture of Barbara that made my blood run cold. Stories of manipulation, gaslighting, and emotional abuse. How she'd driven her husband to an early grave, all while maintaining her image as the perfect wife and mother. But the worst part, Mrs. Jennings said, her voice breaking, was how she turned those boys against their father. Made them believe he was the problem. Even now, I don't think they know the truth. I thanked her, my mind reeling. As I hung up, I knew I had a decision to make. This information could change everything, but using it meant potentially destroying Tom's relationship with his mother forever. The rest of the day passed in a blur. When I got home, the house was filled with the aroma of cooking and the sound of laughter. I walked into the kitchen to find Barbara at the stove, Tom setting the table, and a young woman, presumably Barbara's church friend, sitting at the counter. Nancy, dear. Barbara trilled. Come meet Melissa. She's so excited to hear about your work. I plastered on a smile, shaking Melissa's hand. She seemed nice enough, but I couldn't help resenting her presence in my home. As we sat down to eat, Barbara dominated the conversation, singing Melissa's praises and not so subtly hinting at job opportunities. Tom nodded along, seemingly oblivious to my discomfort. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. I'm sorry, I'm not feeling well. Please excuse me. I fled to our bedroom, closing the door behind me. As I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands shaking, I knew I had reached a breaking point. I couldn't live like this anymore. I pulled out my phone and texted Sarah, "We need to talk. Tomorrow. It's time we did something about Barbara." As I hit send, I felt a mix of fear and determination. Whatever happened next, I knew there was no going back. The next morning, I met Sarah at a small cafe far from our usual haunts. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and she clutched her coffee mug like a lifeline. "I can't do this anymore, Nancy," she whispered. "Last night, Barbara, she went too far." I leaned in, my heart racing. What happened? Sarah's voice shook as she recounted the previous evening. Barbara had shown up unannounced, ostensibly to help with dinner, but it quickly devolved into a barrage of criticism and thinly veiled insults. "She kept going on about how I'm letting George down by not having children," Sarah said, tears welling up. "Then she started talking about adoption, saying it might be our only option, given my inadequacies." My blood boiled. "That's horrible, Sarah. What did George say?" She shook her head, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. "He just sat there, didn't say a word. It's like he's become a different person since Barbara started this whole moving in nonsense." I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "Sarah, there's something you need to know. I spoke with Mrs. Jennings yesterday." As I relayed what I'd learned about Barbara's past, Sarah's face went from shock to disbelief to anger. "How could she?" Sarah whispered. "All these years, making us feel like we were the problem. And the boys, they have no idea, do they?" I shook my head. "I don't think so. Mrs. Jennings said Barbara was very good at manipulating the narrative." Sarah's eyes hardened with resolve. "We have to tell them. They need to know the truth about their mother." Just then, my phone buzzed. It was Tom. "Where are you?" "Mom's here. Says she has big news." I showed Sarah the message, my stomach churning. "We should go. Whatever Barbara's planning, we need to face it head on." When we arrived at my house, Barbara was holding court in the living room, Tom and George flanking her like loyal subjects. Her eyes narrowed when she saw us enter together. "Well, well," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "How nice of you both to join us. I was just telling the boys my wonderful news." I braced myself, catching Sarah's eye. Whatever was coming, we'd face it together. Barbara stood, spreading her arms wide. "I've decided to sell my house and move in here permanently. Isn't it marvelous? We'll all be one big, happy family." The room spun. I gripped the doorframe for support, barely registering Tom's excited response or George's enthusiastic nod. Sarah spoke first, her voice trembling. "No." The room fell silent. Barbara's smile faltered. "I beg your pardon?" Sarah straightened her shoulders, years of pent-up frustration finally breaking free. "I said no, Barbara. You're not moving in here. You're not moving in with us. This has to stop." Barbara's face darkened. "How dare you speak to me that way? After everything I've done for this family? Done for this family?" I found my voice, anger propelling me forward. "You mean like manipulating your sons? Criticizing and belittling your daughters-in-law? Trying to control every aspect of our lives?" Tom stepped forward, his face a mask of confusion. "Nancy, what are you talking about? Mom's just trying to help." I turned to him, my heart breaking. "No, Tom, she's not. She never has been. There's so much you don't know about your mother." Barbara's eyes flashed dangerously. "That's enough. I won't stand here and be insulted in my own son's home." "It's not your home," Sarah shouted, years of pain pouring out. "It's ours, and we're done letting you dictate our lives." The room erupted into chaos. Tom and George shouted defenses of their mother, while Barbara hurled insults and threats. Sarah stood her ground, tears streaming down her face. In that moment, watching the family I'd married into tear itself apart, I made a decision. I couldn't live like this anymore. I couldn't watch Barbara destroy our lives piece by piece. I stepped into the center of the room, my voice cutting through the noise. "Stop, all of you. Just stop." As all eyes turned to me, I took a deep breath. This was it, the point of no return. "Tom," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart, "I love you, but I can't do this anymore. I'm leaving." The stunned silence that followed was deafening. As I turned to walk out the door, I caught Sarah's eye. She nodded, a silent understanding passing between us. Whatever happened next, we would face it together. And Barbara's reign of terror was finally coming to an end. I sat in my hastily rented motel room, staring at the phone in my hand. It had been 3 days since I walked out, and the silence from Tom was deafening. Sarah had texted nonstop, her messages a mix of support and panic. She was staying with a friend, unable to face George after our confrontation with Barbara. A knock at the door startled me. I opened it cautiously, half expecting to see Tom. Instead, I found Sarah, her eyes red-rimmed and wild. I need to tell you something, she said, pushing past me into the room. It's about George and Barbara. My heart raced as Sarah paced the small room, wringing her hands. What is it? What's happened? She took a shaky breath. I went home to get some clothes. George wasn't there, but I found emails between him and some woman named Claire. My stomach dropped. Sarah, are you saying? He's having an affair, she choked out. Has been for months, but that's not even the worst part. I sat on the bed, bracing myself. What could be worse than that? Sarah's face crumpled. Barbara knew. She's been encouraging it. There were messages from her to George telling him he deserves someone who can give him a family. She even introduced them. The room spun. I felt sick. Oh, Sarah, I'm so sorry. She collapsed next to me, sobs racking her body. How could they do this? How could Barbara betray me like this? I thought she at least respected the sanctity of marriage, even if she hated me. As I held Sarah, my mind raced. This wasn't just cruel, it was diabolical. Barbara had systematically destroyed her daughter-in-law's marriage, all while maintaining her facade of family values. We have to do something, I said, anger rising in my chest. We can't let her get away with this. Sarah looked up, her eyes suddenly hard. You're right. No more being passive. No more letting her control our lives. It's time we fought back. We spent the next few hours planning, fueled by righteous anger and cheap motel coffee. We would confront George and Barbara, armed with evidence of their betrayal. But first we needed more information. I called Mrs. Jennings again, pressing for more details about Barbara's past. What she told me made my blood run cold. It wasn't just emotional abuse with her husband, Mrs. Jennings said, her voice quavering. There were rumors, dark rumors about accidents, about money disappearing. Nothing was ever proven, but... I thanked her and hung up, my mind reeling. I turned to Sarah, who was scrolling through George's emails on her tablet. Sarah, I said slowly, I think we need to dig deeper into Barbara's finances and her past. She looked up, her expression grim. You think there's more? I nodded. Much more, and I think it's time Tom and George learn the truth about their mother. Just then, both our phones buzzed simultaneously. It was a group text from Barbara. Family dinner tomorrow night, 7 p.m. sharp. Attendance is mandatory. Sarah and I exchanged looks. This was it, our chance to confront Barbara and expose her lies. As we prepared to leave the motel, gathering our evidence and steeling our nerves, my phone rang. It was Tom. Nancy, he said, his voice strained. We need to talk. Before dinner tomorrow. There's something you need to know. My heart pounded. What is it, Tom? He hesitated. It's about Mom and Dad. I found something in her attic. Something that changes everything. As I hung up, I looked at Sarah. Her face mirrored the mix of fear and determination I felt. Whatever happens tomorrow, I said, we're in this together. She nodded, squaring her shoulders. Together. It's time Barbara faced the consequences of her actions. As we walked out of the motel, I felt a strange mix of dread and anticipation. Tomorrow night, everything would change, and Barbara's carefully constructed world of lies and manipulation would finally come crashing down. My hands shook as I pulled into Tom's driveway. The weight of what we were about to do pressed down on me like a physical force. Sarah sat beside me, clutching a folder full of evidence against Barbara and George. Are you ready for this? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Sarah nodded grimly. It's now or never. We walked to the front door, each step feeling like a mile. Tom answered, his face drawn and pale. Nancy, Sarah, come in. We need to talk before Mom and George arrive. In the living room, Tom paced nervously. I found something in Mom's attic, he began, his voice trembling. Old letters, financial documents. Nancy, I think my father's death wasn't an accident. The room spun. I steadied myself against the wall. What are you saying, Tom? He ran a hand through his hair. The letters suggest Mom was having an affair, and there were large insurance payouts after Dad died. It's all circumstantial, but... Sarah gasped. Oh my God, Nancy, the rumors Mrs. Jennings mentioned. I turned to Tom. There's more you need to know. About your mother, about George. For the next hour, we laid out everything we'd discovered. George's affair, Barbara's manipulation, the years of emotional abuse. Tom listened in stunned silence, his face growing paler with each revelation. Just as we finished, the front door opened. Barbara's voice rang out, falsely cheerful. Hello, darlings. I hope everyone's ready for a lovely family dinner. She entered the living room, George trailing behind her. Her smile faltered as she took in our grim faces. What's going on here? She demanded. I stood, my heart pounding. We know everything, Barbara, about Dad's death, about George's affair, about all of it. Barbara's face hardened. I don't know what you think you know, but... Save it, Sarah interrupted, her voice shaking with anger. She turned to George. How could you? How could you betray me like this? George paled. Sarah, I can explain. Barbara's eyes darted around the room like a cornered animal. Now, let's all calm down. I'm sure this is just a misunderstanding. No more lies, Tom shouted, startling us all. He held up the letters he'd found. Tell us the truth, Mom. About Dad, about everything. For a moment, Barbara's mask slipped. I saw a flash of something cold and calculating in her eyes. Then, to my horror, she began to cry. Oh, my poor boys, she sobbed. I've only ever wanted what's best for you. Everything I've done out of love. I watched in disbelief as Tom and George's faces softened. They were falling for it, just like they always had. No, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. No more manipulation, Barbara. It's over. I pulled out my phone, my finger hovering over a number. I've been in touch with the police. They're very interested in reopening the investigation into your husband's death. One call, and they'll be here with a warrant. The room fell silent. Barbara's tears dried up instantly, replaced by a look of pure hatred. You wouldn't dare. Try me, I said, meeting her gaze. For a long moment, no one moved. Then, Barbara lunged for my phone. In the chaos that followed, accusations flew. George admitted to the affair, Tom revealed what he'd found, and Sarah unleashed years of pent-up anger. Through it all, I stood my ground, phone in hand, ready to make good on my threat. As the shouting reached a fever pitch, a sharp pain lanced through my abdomen. I doubled over, gasping. Nancy? Sarah's worried voice seemed to come from far away. Nancy, what's wrong? The room spun, faces blurring together. As darkness crept in at the edges of my vision, I heard Barbara's voice, cold and clear. Well, isn't this convenient? Just like her to ruin a family dinner with her dramatics. Then everything went black. I awoke to the sterile white of a hospital room, the steady beep of monitors filling the air. Sarah sat beside me, her face etched with worry. Nancy, thank God you're awake, she said, squeezing my hand. You had an acute stress reaction. The doctor said it was brought on by extreme emotional distress. As the fog cleared from my mind, the events of the family dinner came rushing back. Barbara, I croaked. What happened? Sarah's eyes hardened. After you collapsed, everything changed. Tom called an ambulance, and in the chaos, Barbara tried to destroy the evidence. But George finally stood up to her. He confessed everything, the affair, Barbara's manipulation, all of it. My heart raced. And Tom? He's been here every day, Sarah said softly. He's devastated, Nancy, about everything. He wants to talk to you when you're ready. Over the next few days, as I regained my strength, the full story emerged. The police had reopened the investigation into Tom and George's father's death. Barbara was facing serious charges, not just for her potential involvement in her husband's death, but for years of financial fraud and manipulation. Tom came to see me, his eyes red-rimmed and haunted. I'm so sorry, Nancy, he said, his voice breaking. I should have seen it, should have believed you. Can you ever forgive me? I looked at him. This man I'd loved for so long, now finally free from his mother's influence. It's not about forgiveness, Tom, I said gently. It's about moving forward. We've all been victims of Barbara's manipulation. The question is, what do we do now? As I recovered, Sarah and I spent long hours talking, planning our future. We both knew we couldn't go back to our old lives, to marriages built on lies and manipulation. The day I was discharged, Tom and George were waiting in the hospital lobby. The four of us sat in the hospital garden, the weight of years of deception hanging heavy in the air. We've made a decision, I said, looking at Sarah for confirmation. She nodded, her eyes clear and determined. We're leaving, Sarah continued. Not just Barbara, but all of it. We need a fresh start, away from the toxicity and pain. Tom and George looked stricken, but not surprised. We understand, George said quietly. We failed you both. We let our mother poison everything good in our lives. Tom reached for my hand, but I gently pulled away. I hope you both find peace, I said, and I hope you can rebuild your relationship as brothers without Barbara's influence. But Sarah and we need to find our own way now. As Sarah and I walked out of the hospital, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, I felt truly free. Epilogue. 1 year later. I stood on the balcony of our new apartment, watching the sunset over the city. Sarah called from inside, Nancy, dinner's ready. As we sat down to eat, I marveled at how much had changed. We'd moved across the country, started new jobs, and begun the process of healing. Our divorces were finalized, and while the pain of the past still lingered, it no longer defined us. I got a letter from Tom today, Sarah said, passing me the salad. Barbara's trial is set for next month. He and George are testifying against her. I nodded, feeling a complex mix of emotions. How do you feel about that? Sarah considered for a moment. Relieved, I think. It's finally ending, and we're not there to be caught in the crossfire. I reached across the table, squeezing her hand. We made it, Sarah. We're free. As we clinked our glasses in a toast to our new life, I felt a surge of gratitude. For Sarah's friendship, for our shared strength, and for the courage we found to break free from Barbara's web of lies and control. The future stretched out before us, full of possibility, and for the first time in years, I was excited to see what it held.